Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you're joining us from in the world right now. And welcome to episode 45 of International Expansion Explained. And today is actually a first for the show because today I have two guests at once. And so we're going to be jumping between a little bit and having some big discussions, I think, on about the topic of entering into the Indonesian market. So let me just give you a quick intro onto our guests. And whilst I'm doing that, maybe somebody who is joining us from LinkedIn could drop in the comments a quick hi and a confirmation that we are actually live and that you can hear us and see us well, because just occasionally LinkedIn does something a bit odd. So I always like to go to be sure. So welcome to both of my guests. Tassa Agustriana specializes in guiding companies through that really complex journey of product development, regulatory compliance, and market expansion within Indonesia. She has more than 15 years of experience in food and beverage consulting, and that means that she really is ideally placed to combine technical precision with cultural understanding. And my second guest today, oh, thank you, Christina. My second guest today is Jim White, who originally is Australian, and he brings over 25 years of experience in strategic planning, new business development, and marketing strategy in Southeast Asia to the table. So his work focuses on fostering growth within Asia by partnering with food manufacturers, importers, and distributors to unlock opportunities in retail, food service, and manufacturing industries. So more on the commercial side. And both Tassa and Jim are colleagues of mine at Gourmet Pro, which is a boutique agency who specialize in food and drink international expansion. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for having us. And good morning for you too.
Yeah, it's great to see you both here. Maybe just as a little bit of scene setting, slightly more informally, maybe, how did both of you get into international business and how did you arrive at where you are today? Because I'm sure that neither of you, aged 5, would have said to your teacher, I want to be a food and beverage consultant when I grow up.
Yeah. Okay. Probably I start as
Go for it.
the
Thanks, sir.
younger one here. So I think I start in 2011 when I have the opportunity to join a foreign capital company in Indonesia. They are based in Bali. They offer me a part to be the head of quality and food safety department that they have to build it within the corporate and within their businesses unit across Indonesia. So during that time, I connected with different buyers, different clients from international food manufacturer to importer, retailer like Whole Foods, Costco, and of course, different type of suppliers across the globe, as well as the supply chain that consists of thousands of organic farmers by that time. So that after 7 years with the company, I sort of needed corporate breaks because I was just here and there. One in plantation here and the other part of Indonesia and other countries. And due to some of acquaintance and networks and friends that they know that I am from this industry, let's say I'm that factory girl, so they asked me about like, hey, how to source this thing. I mean, like, I want to create this certain artisan teas, basically like all those questions. I sort of like have a little bit of background in that. I helped them and I landed my first project by that time on 2018. So that
Okay.
And so the story began.
so the story began.
Okay. How about
Very
you,
good.
Jim?
Look, I started my international career back in 1998, so a long time ago. I'll let people do the maths on that. Out of Australia, out of university in Australia, into the beef industry here in Indonesia. And I spent 2 years in Indonesia in the beef industry and frozen foods. Then followed different career opportunities and my wife as well at one point around the world, working in Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific over the next 25 years. And I got into consulting just at the start of COVID, having finished up working for a multinational company in Malaysia. So I've been consulting now in FMCG for the last 6 years.
Very good, very good. Okay, so as a little bit of scene setting, most people, I'm sure, are aware that Indonesia has really 270 million people, approximately, a growing middle class, and they are regularly cited as one of the hottest emerging markets for food and drink. But to my mind, I often see that when brand owners actually try to enter into the Indonesian market, they find it a lot harder than expected. So I would like to ask both of you, before we kind of dig into more individual questions, what is the single biggest misconception that you find brands have when they're looking to begin in Indonesia?
Okay.
Tassa,
Okay,
go first.
so since I have a couple of experience, also, let's say, just discussing with like potentials or leads or anyone basically that like really interested in the Indonesian market, usually this is what they say, like, oh, my product is, very on trend in the States or in Europe. And this is really yada, yada, yada with this strong point. So it can be very premium. It's supposed to be premium. We sell it premium. So, in Indonesia, then it can work, right? Because, it's actually like a really high quality product. So this very, very oftenly said, like confidently bring the product. And then, just because in one countries or in one continent, in one market, it's a premium doesn't necessarily mean in Indonesia they understand the premium point that you will claim or relate to that product. The second thing is usually it's more with like, let's say anything related with superfood or like certain ingredients, novel ingredients that probably, this ingredients is already approved based on US FDA or based on European Committee, and then it's supposed to be in Indonesia. They can approve it, right? Like the process will be supposed to be like quick. It not necessarily, because again in Indonesia, it's
Nothing is
always
quick.
that. Nothing is quick, and just because it's fit probably with the consumer behavior in that country, it's not necessarily fit with the Indonesian consumer behavior or the impact in it, right? In terms of like food safety. So this will require a layer of like step in order to have those ingredients to be recognized in BPOM. So yeah, that one.
Yeah.
From my side that I face.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, firstly, people think that if it works well at home or it's worked well in another market, that it's going to immediately enter Indonesia and there'll be a demand. So that they think they can just pick up and plug and play. And the other is the misconception that Indonesia as one market is all the same. And it's very different across Indonesia. And that's what the nuances that people need to understand.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is that question of why Indonesia is so structurally complex is something that people really do underestimate. And also there's that question that most people who've been to Indonesia, they've visited Bali and that's it. They maybe transited via Jakarta and decided that they hated it. But, you know, I mean, most people haven't considered the fact that it's 17,000 islands or more. I'm not quite sure. And therefore, you have, to some extent, a lot of logistic challenges, right? I mean, it's not just a cultural question, although that exists as well. People underestimate the sheer size of Indonesia.
Exactly. Yep. And the diverse eating and buying habits in the different market areas, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. And so, I mean, across those islands, and I think, Jim, this is more a question for you, perhaps, for the beginning. You've got several distinct retail cultures. You've got enormous variation in purchasing power between, say, Java and different parts of Sulawesi or Kalimantan, or especially once you start getting out to Raja Ampat and the smaller areas. So when a brand owner is deciding where to start, how do you frame that prioritization conversation?
Well, look, it's really, you've got to understand, firstly, what the product is, who their target customer is in their own markets, and then look at where they want to position the brand. What is the suitability for the market? How is it going to be used? How is it going to be consumed? In which day part? Right? And then what is the pricing strategy? Where do they see it fits within a premium, middle tier or lower tier pricing strategy? From that, you then need to define the market positioning in your channel strategies. And this is where you have to work with your import partner that you have selected to make sure that what you believe works for your brand is aligned with the market and what the expectations are of the importer. And so there's a lot of different levers here you need to pull, but I think it's very important that people understand exactly is how the product's to be used and what day part they're trying to attract, because that has a real significance. And sometimes, as I've seen with brands in the past, where they believe it fits into one day part because that's what it's happened in the US or in Europe, actually it gets used in a different day part here in Asia because of just the way they consume and the temperature differences, etc. So there's a lot of different complexities here that need to be looked at.
Yeah. I mean, I was traveling last year on Sumatra, and I found it quite interesting to visit shops unlike Samosir on Lake Toba, which is quite a Christian area. And then a week later, I was in Banda Aceh, and just to observe some differences between some of the ranges. Of course, not everything is completely different, but there were subtle differences in the way that products were marketed and presented, simply because you've got a different target customer.
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds obvious when you say it like that, but I think that people often have that assumption that Indonesia is Indonesia, and
there's also different buying patterns because in the middle class in the major cities tend to buy more now in the modern retail, and they'll do a larger shop, whereas in the provincial cities, your Makassar and places like that, where they're buying every day and they're buying what they need, and they're going to the traditional market to buy that. And because they don't have large kitchens to store, to cook in, they don't have large fridges to store products in. So they're buying on a daily basis and buying from the traditional market or the traditional stores. So the way that people are buying, the way that they're consuming is different across the country. So you need to understand that relative to your product and where it fits.
Yeah. I had that conversation once upon a time when I was working for a company who were producing skincare, like baby skincare, shampoo and things like that. We had discussions, for example, in Israel, they wanted like 1 liter packaging because people, at least a segment of the population, have very big families. And in markets in Southeast Asia, people wanted individual portion, these strip. I mean, this is like 15 years ago. So they wanted those strip packaging where you just had you could just buy 1 or 2 at a time so that the cash flow in the family would allow them to buy the product. And generally, even if they wanted like a bottle of product, they wanted a smaller bottle than would be normal in Europe. And I think that's quite a typical example, isn't it, of this kind of change.
Yeah. It all comes down to affordability, the use, how often they're going to use it, and they might be using it more as a treat than a daily routine. And so therefore the pack size has to be smaller to be affordable, to allow them to have that, to spend that extra money on the treat.
And Catherine, if I may add as well, just like Jim said, like the first tier or second tier city, you know, you have like more major retailer player, you have more department store, you have more like bigger groceries. And then we talk about, let's say, the third, fourth tier city in Indonesia, somewhere in the islands or in the province, right? Where probably the access to get any retail product is the moms and pops store that they have.
Yeah.
So they sell like sachet, you know. It's also because, like as Jim said, like the expenses that they can spend within a day, they can only spend for that much as well. So I think it's really, really affecting about like how you need to, like which market that you prioritize based on the character of the product as well, based not only like from pricing point of view, but the daily usage of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we've also got one comment from LinkedIn. I'm not sure who it is because it just tells me LinkedIn user. So if you want to also write your name in the comment, I'll out you to the world. That it comes down to working with that kind of understanding that regional aspect of things, which can be quite tough within Indonesia. And I mean, there is, of course, also amongst brands, even if they understand that they want to localize, they assume that Jakarta, Bali, and that's a tick under Indonesia. How, realistically speaking, for most, let's say, European or Australian brands, is that the case? That they should only be focusing on maybe not Jakarta, but at least Hashi. Okay, thank you, twin. Sorry. That they should be focusing on Java and Bali, and after that, maybe 2-3 years down the line? Or is it very much the case that they should only be focusing on those kind of more population dense regions where you've also got maybe a tourism aspect of things?
I think it's really depends on the product segment. I mean, we cannot deny the fact first, Jakarta is probably now 32 millions in there. And then Bali is only 5 million in there, right? I mean, combinations is how much? It's around like 35 millions out of 280 millions in Indonesia. But the thing is with Jakarta, because it's a capital city, usually it is always the very first touch point for any trend, global trend to be adopted in Indonesia, right? So like people that probably somewhere that sit in Samosir, as you said, that sit in my hometown in Banjarmasin in Kalimantan, you know, like they see from their social media, the cool, like people in Jakarta, the influencer in Jakarta using this brand, and then they want to start to adopt it, right? If they think it is something that are, I mean, something that basic for their day to day, something that is really useful for their day to day, like their basic needs, basically. But then when we talk with Bali, it can also drive the trend, but it's a little bit more segmented. I think it's more into like wellness. We need to also remember that not every people that live in Indonesia is familiar with, let's say, how the lifestyle is in Bali, for the fact that Bali is, we know, it's a majority Hindu culture, and while the other part of Indonesia is Muslim. Bali is more open with tourism, so with more international influence, right? But
Yeah.
like the other people that probably sit in Makassar and Sulawesi, they will not, they probably only see like foreigners once in their life, right? So to get
That was me.
yeah. So to get the understanding about like, oh, in Bali we have the trend with this wellness, kombucha, like they probably not understand about like what type of that beverage, right? Like in there. So it's really like product segmented, because I think, yeah, it's depends on how close it is, the emotional attachment and the understanding about that product knowledge to us Indonesian, majority
Yeah.
Indonesian.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think, sorry, I was just going to add, again, it depends on the product we're talking about, but a premium food product that is unknown in Indonesia, sometimes it's actually easier to target Bali first, where the international tourists know about that product, looking for that product, and then, or they're surprised to see it, and then they start to engage. Then from there, the trend starts to grow. And the people in Jakarta who come to visit start to see the trend. They also see that trend perhaps up in Singapore. And then the two, sort of pull together, and the trend starts to grow in Jakarta, and they start to look for it. Where can we buy it? And someone maybe influences it through their social media. But likewise, Bandung is quite a trendy place, looking for new trends, looking for new ideas. So it's not just as Bali would be your first point of entry. It could well be, depending again on your product and its suitability, it may be Bandung that is you target first to then, because they're very tech savvy, get a lot of influence there through social media, that then it helps to then use as a test bed and then refine your strategy before you launch it in Jakarta. So there's different strategies around different products.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that, that you have to fit your strategy to your product. I know for sure whenever I've mentioned to friends that we were traveling in Indonesia on holiday, people have always asked me, "Oh, have you tried this and have you tried that?" And they were always things that are like, Bali tourist type foods, and I was always just like, no, I didn't see that anywhere offered for breakfast in, Manado
The other place
or
that you visit,
wherever
yes,
I happened, whatever, let's say, strange place for Europeans that I happen to have been traveling that last time. No, I didn't see it because, that's the nature of it. And I think that kind of brings me a little bit into some of the next topic that I wanted to talk about, this question of doing logistics in Indonesia, because I think that probably more than anywhere else, other than maybe, the Philippines has a similar story, but in this aspect, but we're not going to touch that today. But that question of logistics and actually physically getting product from one island to the next, I think is also quite the challenge, right? Especially if you have something that needs to be kept cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think, certainly cold chain is a challenge across all the different islands. Generally, the main ports of importation are Jakarta or Surabaya, and then you need to get your product into your target market area. Not only about cold chain, but also if your product is physically fragile. Then the roads here are not like German autobahns, and they're beautifully smooth, etc. They are rough
these days.
and so we see a lot of times that products can get damaged, even if it's just the plastic lid on top of the product.
Yeah.
That can get damaged in transit because there's a lot of transshipping that goes on. It might get offloaded from the container into a warehouse, from the warehouse into a truck, from the truck to a ferry, from a ferry onto another truck, and all that physical triple, double handling. And they're not always the most careful, the people who are doing the transportation. Products can get damaged easily. So there's a lot of complexities around this, and people do need to factor in that there will be damages.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that last mile logistics across almost the whole of Southeast Asia, if you're talking about delivering into mom and pop stores, which for sure is not the first step for any kind of brand who's looking to enter into the market, but further down the line, a lot of that last mile logistics is actually done on a motorcycle, isn't it? With a kind of mobile, almost, how should I say, built out to a mobile truck. And you see them on roads where you're thinking, there are potholes in this road that you could lose a small child in. And somebody is driving a delivery motorcycle like this on a mountain road somewhere in the Tanah Toraja. And it's...
Well, even in Jakarta, that last mile, if your product is a frozen or temperature controlled product, and that last mile is it's on a motorbike being delivered in a plastic bag, then anything you could have put into place to ensure that the product stayed at its right temperature might fail in that last mile, because the only way to get it quickly to the point is by motorbike. Yeah. And so again, you need to look at exactly how the product will be delivered throughout the supply chain, not just it needs to be shipped in a frozen container.
Yeah. We touched on the beginning about this question of regulatory compliance, and I think that is, for me, that is maybe like the biggest headache if you're looking at entering into the market, because at the end of the day, whilst there are specifics that apply to Indonesia because of the islands and because of the structure, and you have to take care about the culture, at the end of the day, if you can't get your product over the border, then it doesn't matter how culturally sensitive or localized you are, you don't have any chance at all. And Indonesia has that reputation of being one of the most demanding regulatory environments in Southeast Asia. Is that reputation truly justified? And if it is, what does that actually translate to if a brand is looking to come into the market for the first time?
Okay, so I mean, when we say that demanding, yes, because at the moment, like our system, we actually have this platform, centralized platform, that actually we talk it still very new. They started on 2018. It calls online single submissions, risk-based assessment. That so far it means that less than a decade. It's sort of like evolving and adjusting every 2-3 years. That makes the whole process is slower because it has to be applied through the whole countries, right? Across the professional government, across the regency government as well. And basically, when we talk about demanding, it's more into these applications on the floor, like on the field, basically. We talk about demanding in requirement. I don't think so, because when we talk about the food safety management system standard that Indonesian FDA, or we call it as BPOM, applied in here, is only the same as prerequisite and good manufacturing practice. So you don't have to be ISO 22000 certified, then you can bring your product. It's actually no. But it's more because it's very administrative approach. So even the administrative officer, they need to have the whole administrations to be set in order to process within the next stage, right? So
Yeah.
I think the difference is with European, with American, the other major market, basically, they already have this stable system set up related with their compliance, for decades, right?
Yeah.
100 years plus. While Indonesia, if you are doing your business now, you are actually be a part of those movement, like to digitalize the whole thing. So it is quite a stressful time, of course, but no matter what, we need to start from a point. So I think this is the things that creates that type of like how I can say demanding impressions with our government system.
But I mean, just to add to that though, because I work across Southeast Asia, is I actually see that the levels of information that Indonesia requires is actually no different now to what a lot of other markets want. Thailand, Philippines, South Korea, they're all demanding a lot of information, and they want to assess your ingredient lists and your nutritional statements against your against the products themselves, and they'll test for those that what you claim is on the label, is that actually what's in the product. And they actually demand, with food products, packaged food products, they demand a full breakdown list of your ingredients in percentage terms.
Correct.
So they want to know how much water, how much sugar, how many carbohydrates, this flavor, what is the flavor, where is it from? And some companies find that very difficult because they say, but that's our trade
We're not
secret.
opening our recipes for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you have to provide it, and that's part of doing business in Indonesia, as it is in other countries now, where you have to divulge your formula to them, and sign your NDAs with your importer. But there's never a guarantee. But if you want to be in the Indonesian market, that's what you need to do.
And I think, realistically speaking, it's not only, like you say, it's not only Indonesia, it's not only Southeast Asia. Korea is exactly the same. If you want to, I've not done business in Japan, but I could imagine that they also have a similar process. China is also a similar process. And I think that what makes maybe Indonesia unique is what you touched on, and also what Hashi mentioned, that there's, at the moment, this process is in a state of evolution, if you like. And so the actual physical process of getting a product approved, there's a lot of red tape still. And it's a time-consuming process, isn't it? You need to submit really a lot of documentation. And so it feels like it's complicated, even if the standards that are actually asked for are not any higher than what you would be asked for in any other market, but you're asked to prove them, which Europeans are often not used to being asked to prove them, because they're used to people trust is something that's often taken for granted within Europe, even within the food industry. You can rely on a statement or a certificate that's issued by your supplier. You don't necessarily have to do those tests yourself. And I think within Asia generally, you also have to provide a certificate from a third-party lab that shows that A and B are true. You can't just expect to be trusted because you, the manufacturer, say, my product's good to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Correct.
And especially if the ingredient or one of the ingredients is new to Indonesia, it hasn't been brought in, that takes a lot more time, because they need to understand exactly what it is. And is it food safe? Even if you have food safety certificates from your country of origin, they want to then research and test and ensure that it's food safe to Indonesian standards for their consumers. Okay, so there are steps that need to go through.
Yeah. I mean, like Thomas said, you've got a lot of steps to go through that almost feel, they feel like these limitations on the import process. And you have to go through those before you can even start looking for the right distributor, because otherwise if you have the negotiations up front with a distributor and you still have to spend a year or maybe more for meat or dairy, maybe 2 years waiting for an audit, then, you know, a distributor is maybe not waiting that long for you, are they? So.
Correct. And if I may add, basically, even before you go to that stage of registering your facility or your product to the BPOM, with this centralized system, you need to ensure first your prerequisite, your other permit. Before that, if you have the correct business license for that certain business activities that sell a certain type of product, has to be correct. And then you need to be in the right location, right zoning. Without that, then you already get blocked within that stage. You cannot move forwards to the other stage that connected more to like the technicality certification, such as BPOM, such as halal, or let's say veterinary control number for any animal product processing facility, right? They also like now it's become mandatory. So like the very beginning to really define and to really understand which factor that you need to prepare even before, you know, you deal with your distributor. You need to really build that set of checklists, and then like your representative in here, either your importer or your principal, need to really understand that point. And then need to get the correct permit and document for that activities.
I agree. And I think, I mean, if you're lucky enough that you have an importer who's shown interest in your product, that importer should have their own internal team who understands the regulations and understands what is required to get your product registered, all the certifications, et cetera, and they should be able to guide you through that process. So it's not as daunting as that you need to figure all this out yourself. You know, if you've got the right import partner that is asking the right questions and shown interest, then they should be the ones advising you.
Yeah. We spoke briefly a week or so ago that Indonesia also has this new business registration for KBLI business classification codes that was implemented, I think, from the middle of June this year. For any brand owners who are either already in the market or who are about to commit to an importer, could you explain a little bit why it is that getting those codes right really matters so much, and what are the consequences potentially if they make a mistake with this? Because I think this is something quite new for many people.
Yes. When we talk about the business license code, or like in Indonesia, we call it KBLI. So related with the food and beverage, at least retail product, then you need to understand this coding built or connected to a certain type of like manufacturing activities, right? So if you produce meat or animal product, like it will be different than if you actually produce, let's say, seafood, or if you producing chocolate, or if you produce like a beverage product, right? And then since 2018, we have like 2 different coding that changing, if I'm not mistaken, in 2017 as well, and then 2020, and now they have the 2025 version. Why? Because it's just government recognize a more detailed breakdown of these industries or business activities. From my understanding, until now, BPOM still using the coding in 2020. It means every company that probably registered before 2025, they will still have this type of business coding. The connections later is when you start to applying the facility certification for your BPOM, for your warehousing, right? For your product. Everything goes back again to this online single submission platform. That's why I bring it here, because like it or not, this is one platform that we will have to work closely. Everything, it starts from there, everything is in there, right? If your platform do not state it this correct new coding version of 2025, then you cannot even find the options or click the options to submitting your proposal.
So there's actually no negative consequence, as it were. It's just you don't get further down the line. Yeah.
Correct. The negative consequence probably that you can see is it means you need to change some company that has a different coding, that now the coding is changed, because there are some coding that's still the same. They have to change their date adjustment, and then they have to change their business licenses. Then of course it is, like another budget or another investment, but you need to have it right. And probably like your timeline will be delayed around like 4 to 6 weeks, but then you can like continue as usual. You can move further along the line, that, and no guarantee whether we will still keep these business licenses, within the next further years. So yeah, that's the major challenge that we have now.
Okay. So, I mean, if a brand is looking to come into the Indonesian market, could you give me like a broad picture rundown of what is the order of steps that they should be going through? Because we know that they have to register with BPOM. We know that they have to do their halal certification. If they're in certain categories, they have to also have this kind of factory audit, which they have to apply for and then wait for the authorities to be making, for example, a trip to Europe. They can't just expect that they're going to come for one factory and that's going to be tomorrow. So what kind of process and what kind of timelines are we actually looking at here for most companies?
Okay, so let's say that you're already like an existing brand, you have a product, you want to bring it to Indonesia. First, define the product definition based on BPOM products category, right? From there, then it will be related to basically like which KBLI that you or your importer has to have, because the importer, not everyone can bring or import various type of products. Some importers probably only have licenses for certain type of product.
Yes.
From
I've
there, you have
experienced
to
this before now with importers where I've spoken to them and he said to me, no, sorry, I don't have dairy licenses, for example.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And then from there, you also need to understand whether your importer already have like a compliance document for their warehousing, because of course, BPOM will require that. And along the way, part of those documents, necessarily basic documents that you need, like your quality assurance program, product specification, lab test report, for your product, your label, of course, packaging that has to be converted to Indonesian BPOM standard as well. So of course, you still can use the original packaging, but you need to add like a sticker label with Bahasa Indonesia, right? Because you distribute it in Indonesia. And then basically after that, you need to check all the other related certification. If you are a meat dairy product, let's say, if you happen to be a producer, then of course you will need the NKV or veterinary controlled number certificate as well. If you, let's say, claim you have like you are a vegan product, it means then you need to show your vegan certificate from international body certification, or you need to provide them with a certain type animal DNA testing as well from the acknowledged laboratory, accredited laboratory in Indonesia. And some type of product category, the one that with like high risk, then probably the BPOM, like if the production facility abroad, most of the time, as long as you provide them with your food safety certification, then it's already enough. But for every single production in Indonesia, you will definitely get a visit by the BPOM, no matter what type of product that you have. It's like a mandatory first visit, and then they will repeat it annually to do like an announced audit. So that, so related with the timeline, if it's just a food beverage product, consumer packaged goods, right? And you already work with a proper licensed importer, we can like process it in between, I think, 3 to 6 months. but then it will take like longer time if it's already in that traditional medicine category. And then a specialty foods, let's say for infants, for
Yep.
athletes, for a certain type of diet, for supplement, usually they will take another 18 to 24 months. So, and of course, a more specific lab report needed. These informations are the one that your importer is supposed to be able to provide it to you, right? So you're working on your checklist together.
Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know that a lot of countries are using, when I'm on these talks, I'm always mixing up countries and companies. Many countries tend to use regulatory frameworks as a kind of market protection tool that helps them to support local producers. How much of the regulatory burden that Indonesia has is genuine product safety, and how much of it is a kind of strategic friction that they're building in to help support local producers? Because I know that there's also a second part to this, which is that there's a certain pressure on brands to commit to producing locally within a certain frame of time. Ideally, the government would like this, right? That for certain types of products, it would be good to produce within Indonesia.
Correct.
And
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. So when we talk about like whether the regulations now, let's say, is there to protect or to secure more local manufacturing or local production, I really think it depends on it's you see it more in term of the business license scope, because like this, it's a fact that if you are a local registered company instead of a foreign capital company registered in Indonesia, you will have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the pre-requirements or permits related with that activities. Because once you already like, if you are a foreigner and then you do business activities in here, your company is automatically by default as a large scale company, even though you do the same activities, the same production with the local company one. But when we talk about the risk as in terms of food safety standard, both still the same, both still the BPOM not differentiate the different requirements from, let's say, a cheese manufacturer owned by Indonesia with a cheese importer, that bring the cheese product from like France, example, from Australia. The food safety system, the checklist, it's still the same, but the other permit related, probably instead of you have to be in the industrial zone because like you are a foreign capital manufacturer, for the local company you can just be in commercial zone level 1, like,
Okay.
so a little bit more into the other licenses, not really for the other. I think the point is really like, like the governments want to keep everything that they can do, of course, like that we can produce by ourselves. We want to cover that base, that security. And then while we still, giving opportunities for, all those aspects that we don't have yet the knowledge or the technology to do. So that's why they directly put it like as a large scale company for other foreign manufacturer. This is,
I mean, Hashi was suggesting that it's also extra friction because there's so many updates and so many changes in the regulation that it makes it more complex for brands when things change regularly to know what's the.
yes.
Yeah,
And I mean,
go on,
sorry,
Tassa.
Jim. Just like, unfortunately, this is also even me. I mean, I base here in Indonesia, right? And then my job is, like supporting regulatory, like for my clients. Even I sometimes still, like feel like, oh, I'd never hear any socializations. Like, really, we need to be the persons that is aggressive, the persons that is like independent to keep like asking if there is any news, any regulations, any policies, because probably, yeah. Oh, yeah, we publish it in the website, right? Or, but majority of the time, 90% of the time, like no one really, even the practitioner, understand this or heard about this. So the communication or the socialization for every new policy, I think it's still quite lacking. And then majority of our website also still in Bahasa Indonesia. So even for me, let's say as a foreigner, then I want to like be in Indonesia and I go to their site, like I cannot understand the words, right? It's still very non-accessible compared than the other country, I think.
Yeah. Jim, you wanted to add something?
I was just going to say, I mean, of course, in Indonesia, as in a lot of other countries, they're trying to encourage local manufacturing to provide economic growth in the country. Not only for domestic consumption, but also to open up new export opportunities. So, of course, the regulations that they put in place will be there to try to encourage companies to come in and manufacture, as opposed to then just to produce overseas and import. And you look at the import duties that are on products. As packaged food products generally can range between 20 to 30, even up to 40% on alcohol. And I mean, there are free trade agreements, but they don't apply to all product categories. So you've got to really look into that, exactly where your product fits. But it really is a case that they are trying to encourage as much product to be produced locally to then support the communities, and not only just in around the greater Jakarta area, but they want manufacturing to be set up in other regions to then support those the economic growth in those regions as well.
Yeah, which is a perfectly reasonable policy to have.
Absolutely.
Always depends a little bit on how it's executed and carried out, but the basic principle of it, I think, is something that many countries should be taking an example of.
Yep.
So let's move away a little bit from the regulatory questions, because we're almost at the end of our time, and I would just like to spend a few minutes at the end quizzing Jim on what are the questions that a brand should be using to help themselves really find the right importer in Indonesia. Because I think for having the right importer in a market, or having the right partner in any market, is often where the strategy either thrives or it just curls up in the corner and dies.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Indonesia is no different to that. So what would you say, how does a genuinely good Indonesia importer look, and how rare is it that you can actually find a really good partner for your brand?
I mean, there's, again, this comes down to a lot of product specific elements in this, but and there are a great spectrum of different importers, all with their own strengths and weaknesses in the country. I think the first thing you need to look at is, and especially if you get approached or if you're researching to try to find the right importer, is to look at what type of products they have that are similar to yours. Are they complementary? Do they have the same cold chain or the same logistics elements factored in? Are they working with other international brands? They might say they're an importer, but they're only importing products from Thailand and from the Philippines. Yet they're talking to you in Europe or America or Australia and saying, "Oh, we're a major importer of international brands." So you need to look at then who are the other brands that they're importing and from where. You also, I mean, obviously it's very important to come into the market and to spend time, laying eyes on the importer, not just over a video call, because it's not only about are they the right importer, but it's also, is your product really the right fit for the market? And we spoke earlier about packaging size, about convenience, etc. So it's very important that you come in with them and inspect their facilities, go into the market with them, talk to the clients, talk to consumers, observe what happens in the market, to then know if they're the right fit for you. And we're going through a lot of these quickly, but one of the critical things also when you're choosing an import partner is just because they've expressed interest and then you've made the effort to come across does not mean that they're going to sign the distribution deal with you there and then. That first meeting face to face is generally just about building trust. It's just about getting to know each other. So you can't expect to fly in and have a deal done in the first container audit. You need to come back to the market multiple times to spend time with them, to build up that trust and rapport between, and understand who are the key people within the importer who are going to be in charge of your brand, and make sure that you've got that synergy, because sometimes there are within different importers, they'll have different points of communication. You know, if it's a quality person, if it's a purchasing person, if it's a salesperson, a marketing person, they're all different points. Other importers will say, we'll have a brand manager, and they're the person that's your one point of contact that you need to talk to. But they're not going to tell you that up front. That comes about by spending time with them, talking with them, understanding, asking the right questions, to then really determine, are they the right partner for you? Then you start talking about obviously the price positioning and the marketing strategies. Are they willing to invest in the marketing as well? Are they expecting you to put all the money into the marketing? Are they demanding long credit terms up front, or are they understanding that that they need to pay? If you can't get insurance first, that they need to pay up front first, and over time you'll then agree on providing credit terms as you build the business. So there's many different things around this as how you try to pick the right partner. And sometimes you may not get it right the first time. And you may have to then decide later on that you need to pivot and either work with two importers because one importer can't reach part of the market you want to target, or that you decide that you need to then move across because what they promised you doesn't come to fruition and you're not getting growth, and even with all the support you can provide, that doesn't happen. So then you need to decide, well, do I need to switch over to someone else?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, if I'm looking for a partner and it's not just subject to Indonesia, it's most of Asia, and it's most of the world, realistically speaking, apart from maybe the US and Europe, that investing that time up front in the relationship is always repaid manyfold, simply because, firstly, if the chemistry is just wrong with a company, then it doesn't matter what you do and how correct they are, then it's never going to be kind of, it's never going to be that spark between you. I mean, it's like if I tell you that my best friend is a lovely person and that you would really enjoy meeting them, they might be a lovely person, but it doesn't mean that you are going to enjoy spending an evening with them, does it? It's one of those things that I think companies on paper, they like to ignore, but it actually plays a much bigger role in the practicality of managing a market than most companies are prepared to acknowledge. And that is something that if you don't spend the time sitting down with people, and even just that thing of having a meal together. There's somebody that I know who used to try and make sure that his sales guys would get out of a country as fast as possible and not stay to have dinner, even in Asia, because he didn't want them to have more time than was absolutely necessary to mess up effectively. And I was just like, that's telling me that either you have the wrong sales team or you have the wrong business partners, because, but that was the way they were working. And
I mean, relationships are definitely paramount. And if you're trying to build up a long-term partnership, you need to do it with people that trust each other, and you need to spend time building that trust. You might have a great product, but I've had some clients from Europe who've said, but our product is fantastic. Why don't they want to buy it? And I said, because they don't know you.
Yeah.
It's not about your product, it's about you. Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are we? That I'm representing the brand. You need to spend that time building that rapport, that trust, and talking about family and talking about the traffic in Jakarta and talking about the weather and all the other things. And, and having a meal
Talking
together.
about durian and talking about,
and all that, and that takes time. And then later on, they then start to talk to you about the product or the service, whatever you're trying to offer.
Yeah. Okay, we are Harshy is saying that that's why he always has his meetings over a beer. So, and I'm just going to say to him, that's not necessarily always an option in Indonesia.
No. It's a Muslim country.
With a nasi padang, perhaps.
Yeah, some places it works. Maybe as a closing question, before I ask both of you to just give me a quick rundown about your services, if for a brand owner who's listening to this and thinking, I would like to be in Indonesia within the next 18 months, what is one thing that you would want them to do differently from the very beginning of that plan compared to the brands that you have seen struggled? What is just one thing, very quick answer, one sentence from each of you, please.
Jim first?
I would say visit the market first, get to understand the market before you even start to propose an idea or a service or a product.
Yes. Don't go anywhere, people, without having visited the market.
Yeah, feasibility stage, right? That is needed. Really gotta know what is your product. If there is any other competitor there, how the market will receive the communication from your side later, and find the correct importer, as in they are not your sales extensions, but they are your partner. They're holding all your compliance, all your legal documents. So make sure you partner with the right one, because you will need it. They hold all the rights later for all the product license that you have and you distribute in Indonesia.
Okay, Tassa, Jim, it has been lovely chatting to the two of you today. I don't want to go too much over the hour, and we're already a little bit over. Just very briefly before we close up right now, could you tell the audience which kind of services you offer? Who is it who should reach out to you if they're thinking right now, Indonesia, we've done the feasibility, we know it's the right market for us. Who should be reaching out to? Either and both of you.
Sure. Tassa?
So me, as usual, if you want to start to bring your product to Indonesia and need the assistance, especially related with the regulatory, either it's a well-known brand, a new product, or new substances that you also need a further assistance in technical, you can reach me out. I'm in Bali, but happy to meet you in Jakarta or other city later. And if you happen to also want to build a production facility in here, I will help you from concepting, layouting, building the system, training your team until you are ready to go in your commercial stage here in Indonesia.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Very good. Look, I work very much on the commercial side in terms of the market entry strategies, the importer selection and management. And I, for some brands that I work with, I represent the brand in the region in Southeast Asia. And so I work with them across all the markets, managing the importers across all different markets, sharing the best practices. So some clients want me to just open new markets. Others want me to then restructure existing business they've got because it's not working for them. And we'll look at the sales and the marketing strategies, the channel management, the geographical management within each country, especially Indonesia with all the different islands and different cities, and how we penetrate across all those different areas. And that's working with the importer or finding the right importer who will deliver that.
Yeah. And I think that is very much the key to it all. Finding the right person who's not just the right person for your market and your product, but who's also the right partner for your company who can help you and work together with you.
Yeah, and it's important having someone in the region who understands the nuances of each market and is in the same time zone that they can reply quickly to clients' needs and requests, especially if you're in Europe or you're in America. Time zone becomes a big issue, and your understanding of those cultural nuances isn't as strong. So having people like Tassa or myself available in the market to be your boots on the ground and knowing the ins and outs, I think is very important to success for companies, as opposed to just saying, oh, we're going to export a container and leave you to it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much to both of you. It has been wonderful to discuss. I'm sure we could have gone on for a lot longer. I would have been able to come up with a lot of more questions. We could have gone on for the rest of the afternoon. But I very much appreciate both of you being here, and thank you also to those people who've been here listening all the way through.
Thank you.
Sure.
Pleasure.